I'd just like to really thank you for taking time to speak to my team and I. And for the rest of my team, so Mteto, we now have 86 people in our company. So we have grown since the end of last year. I think we were at about 35 people. But the business has scaled. You know, we've been very proud of our journey. So, you know, just for the rest of the team, I had the privilege of meeting Mteto when we started Wyzetalk. Microsoft had just gone through the process of buying Yammer, which was a direct competitor of ours. And Mteto's always been a real supporter of South African entrepreneurs and gave Gerard, Leon, and myself the opportunity of working Wyzetalk within our first version of Wyzetalk within the Chief Information Officer Council of South Africa. Him and I have kept close contact over the last 7 to 8 years, even to his move to MTN, which we will talk about a bit later in the questions. And then Mteto moved to Altron in 2017, and since he started there, the share price has increased by 200%. And Mteto, like you, I bought shares the day you started, so I've been very pleased with that. I think more significantly about Mteto is that he's a phenomenal business leader. He's an empathetic business leader. He cares about people. And I'm incredibly proud and honored to have you on this call today. So on behalf of my team and I, thank you so much for your time today. I'd like to start by, you know, in your book, you talk a lot about your childhood and your parents, and then, you know, going on to engineering when your dad wanted you to become a doctor. If you could just give us a bit of, you know, just a bit of a summary of your early childhood, you know, and some of the challenges you faced, that would be great.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Gijs, for inviting me to join your team. Asking about my early childhood, I grew up in the Eastern Cape, so I come from Mteto originally. I always say that my family is a little bit complex, in the sense that it's a blended family. My mother married my dad, and my dad came with 6 children. And so he then married my mom, and we ended up having a family of now we're 12, including the 2 parents and 10 children. So very, very large family and complex. Complex because of these 2, you know, it's like 2 different families being brought together. And that, I'm highlighting that because it had a lot of influence in the way that I look at things. Because for me, discrimination started in the family. Before I even stepped out to be part of South Africa, I experienced some of that from the people that I was growing up with, because somehow they felt that I was not part of them, you know. But how I was taught by my parents to deal with that shaped the way that I look at diversity in general, you know. There was a strong focus, you know what, you guys, you know, focus on the things that are common. You are one family, you know, and when you take that and move into the South Africa context, you can start to understand how we can use some of that thinking as we look at different race groups in our country, you know. And so that shaped me a lot in terms of how I view diversity and different races and different tribes, for that matter. I also grew up being used largely by my mother to support her in her business. She had started a trading store. Because of the family was so large, their salaries of both of them were teachers. They just could not support us. So my mother cashed her pension, started her business. To cut the long story short, she literally was the person who helped all of us to acquire university education through that business of hers. It transformed us as a family unit. But growing up in that environment, having to work, come back at home, having to stand behind the counter, serve customers, observe her as she is dealing with her, the people that were working for her. That shaped also my way of managing, you know, how much she was connecting and trying to get insights from the people working for her. Because these are the people who are dealing with customers every day. It showed me that there's huge amount of value in working together as a team, and also sourcing some ideas from the people that have a better understanding of the issues, which is the people working for you. And how she dealt with customers in general. The common factor when it comes to me, in all of the jobs that I've done, the two things that you will always find that I'm doing as a priority is people. You know, how one manages and connects and engages with staff. That's the first thing. The second one is customers. And I can attribute that focus back to my days in that little shop of my mother, you know. So that helped me a lot. But also growing there, I also had the opportunity to, you know, I was very interested in technical things, and you know, her cars and her truck always broke down. It was not a brand new truck, so it had to be fixed from time to time. So I saw myself being very much attracted to when looking at the mechanics trying to solve and fix this thing. So I'm very much attracted to that. And that also helped me to better understand that, hey, medicine is is not where my passion is. My passion is with things, you know, in fixing and building and designing things. Hence my engineering choice as a career. You know. So that is my background. Very difficult to get in those days into engineering. As a Black person, you had to apply to the Minister of Education, because those days people like me, it was felt that, you know, we do not have the capability to do this kind of courses. In fact, we were not designed to be doing that kind of a thinking careers. We need to be doing the heavy lifting, you know. So getting into university, very difficult, but well, I did manage to get in there. Again, it was tough being, you know, one of the first Black engineering students, just one or two of you in a class of 300 different people. So very, very tough. I'm glad that things have changed now. You know, they're no longer like the way they were then. You know, yeah. But that's a little bit about me, Chris.
So just coming back to your mom and her entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
I've always sort of viewed you as an entrepreneur as well as a, you know, corporate leader. And I'm wondering how much influence that has had. I think you touched on it very briefly in terms of how you had to trade with people across the counter. But, you know, just that engagement, do you think that also formed you in a way of how you deal with people today and your customers?
It certainly has. It's probably the single most important thing that has shaped not just me, the four of us. You know, that you know, the four children. If you look at my brother, is an entrepreneur. You know, he's running his own business. He's got over 200 people that he's employed. You know, he's a doctor, but he decided to go build a business in the healthcare space. And he's not practicing doctor, he's offering, it's called EAP, kind of services to customer, to enterprises, you know. So, and that's the same thing with my sister, also. She's very much entrepreneurial, you know. So all of that comes from I think it comes from the background. We're shaped by our parents, and also that thing of saying, don't give up. Don't look at problems. Yes, there are problems, but try and figure out solutions to those problems. Let's find out. It's one thing to complain. It's the easiest thing to do. Complaining is so easy, but trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. And we have all been given that capability. All of us, all human beings, we've been given brains to think about things and trying to come out of these situations. So that's why in my situation, I may be in a corporate environment, but what I'm doing within the corporate environment is new things. I'm always innovating. I'm coming up with new ways of doing things. So I may not be running my own company, but I'm actually using the thinking, the entrepreneurial thinking within a corporate environment. Unlike you are running completely your own company, but I still think that I'm doing some of the thinking very much like you.
Okay. So you also, you mentioned just now as well about discrimination, and one of our team members, Tandon Tuli, has this question for you. Have you ever felt discriminated against as a Black man working in the corporate space, and how did you overcome it? And I know in your book as well, you make reference to a particular Greg, about how, you were confronted with it, but I think it must be and must have been something that you consistently had to wrestle with in terms of fairness. And if you could just tell us a little bit about maybe some incidences where that happened, and particularly what you did as an individual to overcome it in your own self, but also how you presented it as externally.
Okay. So this question about have I ever been discriminated against as a Black person? I mean, if you are a Black person, it's just something that you need to expect, but that's just the world, how the world is. The world is racist, and so that's my starting point. I know that wherever I go, where I go to the US, in South Africa, to China, wherever, the world, the way it treats Black people is so different from the way it treats other people. So my expectation is always that I will be discriminated, and I have been discriminated throughout my career. I continue to be discriminated even today. So this is not. It's just how the world is. It's a sick world, very, very sick. But you can cry about it, or you can accept that this is how things. You don't like it. That's how things are. But when people start to discriminate, they've got some beliefs in them. They are underestimating you as a human being. They think that there's less, you can do less of whatever. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. Huge amount of underestimating the capacity of that individual. So that is actually a very good position to be in, where the people around you think that you are actually performing at a quarter of your capability, when you know that you're actually performing at the same level as them, or in sometimes better. That is where you want to be, and that's where you need to use that position to demonstrate, and to use that because the guards are down, and you just go and get what you're looking for, and you continue to beat them, because they think that you just cannot think, you are not capable, you are lazy, that's how the world is. So I've chosen to use that position to my advantage, the fact that people are discriminating me. To use an example, when I left MTN to join Altron, one of the things that is required by the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is when you make appointments at such a senior level, you need to announce it to the market that, hey, now we have chosen Mteto as the CEO of Altron. We tell the market that. And guess what? When they tell the market that they've chosen me, you guess what happened? You know, the share price clearly goes in the wrong direction. Why? I can never understand why I should go in the wrong direction when my track record is always been that one of delivering and being, doing very well. Each time you are given an opportunity, you exceed the expectations. But when you are announced that now you are taking over this thing, the share price goes in the wrong direction. You can never understand why it is the case. But that's how the racist world is, So it did not surprise me that it went that direction. Then a few months later, another colleague of mine leaves his company, and just like I did, takes over a similar kind of a company like I was taking in the IT space. But of course, he's white. He's a friend of mine. His white is announced just like I was announced, and the share price does not go up 2%. No, it does not go up 5%. No, it goes up much higher than that. That day that is announced, he's not done anything. The day is announced, it goes up 25%. 25%. It's like, I call this white magic, It's like, it's a magic. I don't know how it happens. It's just because it's going to be you who's taking over, clearly things are going to be fine. So how do you then interpret this? Because there's unfairness there. There's unfairness. How do you interpret this? You can kill yourself looking at it and say, "Oh, this is so unfair," this world. Or you can take the same thing and say, "Okay, let me turn this thing around. How can I use it to motivate myself? This thing, demonstrate that, you know what, you are wrong. You were so wrong. Like now you are telling me that the share price has gone up 200%. That is the demonstration in practical terms that you were so wrong. I'm going to show you that this is how things, this is how capable we are, And you look at the same kind of an individual that got the share price when going up 25%. After a couple of years, what has happened? Exactly the opposite. So that is how you deal with this kind of things. Instead of crying and saying things are unfair, just execute excellence, deliver better. Beat people up in terms of their expectations. That's just how I chose to handle it.
Okay. Thank you. So, I mean, for us in our business, we pride ourselves very much on our culture and very much on what we do as a team. One of the guys that started our business with us, he coined a phrase when we went down and won an Anglo-American contract, is we're going shark fishing with a fly rod. And it's something I use a lot. So Leon, thank you for that. But culture for me has always been absolutely important for a business. And I remember, when you went to MTN, that you did really, really struggle with the culture of that business. And just, obviously now coming into Altron, and, Altron was in trouble as a business. It still did massive revenues, but really was underperforming systemically over a number of years. Really just be good, number one is how important is culture to you, and how important is it to an organization? And then number two, you also talk about candor, and there's also a very famous book that was written by Lasseter, who was the founder of Pixel, just around candor, and that if you trust one another, you can have difficult conversations. So if you could just maybe just describe what you've done to get the culture, or start working in that direction of a strong culture within Altron, what you found was a negative attribute at the previous business, and also just around how you can have direct conversations with people without triggering them.
Yes. So culture, there is this gentleman, I think his name is He says something about culture, eating, and breakfast.
Oh, that's Drucker. Yes, he says culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Peter
Yeah.
Drucker who
Peter
says
Drucker, that's right.
culture will eat strategy for breakfast. We tend to just accept that statement as a truth. I personally always question things. So although it may appear on the surface to be, it looks like, yeah, this is true, I question things. And I battle with that. I understand what he means, but to me, culture and strategy is not, there's a culture there and there's a strategy there. Actually, to me, the culture is the strategy. It's through culture that you are able to differentiate yourself, and it's through culture, as he's saying also, that if you do not deal with that culture, you will never execute your strategy. Your culture can kill you. So yes, we are saying the same thing, but our understanding of it is not the one or the other. It is the same thing. You use culture to achieve what you want to achieve. And if they ask me, hey, Mteto, how is the culture of Altron? How has it accepted you? You are a black guy coming into this environment that was largely white, Afrikaner, how my job as a leader is not to say, is this culture, is it welcoming me? My job is to create a culture, not accept that this is how things are and just fit into that, is to create a culture that is going to help us to perform as a business. So that is how important culture is to me. I go back to MTN. There, what I picked up at the time was, for those of you who used to be the customers of MTN then, you may remember we were really known as a company that had dropped calls. You drive around Cape Town, and you are on the phone, dropped calls, forever dropped calls. You go to an MTN store, you struggle getting the kind of service that you're looking for. So the systems were unable to serve the customers. You log your complaint via social media, nobody will ever really come back to you. So these were the things that I saw when I look at that culture and said, no, we cannot address. If we want to be trusted, we have to start with the basics. We are in the business of communication. And if somebody is using our device and our service and is getting dropped calls or is not having a coverage in a particular area, we are not serving that person. So let us start with that basic. So we had to focus on bringing this culture of customer centricity, putting the customer at the center of who we are. Fast forward to today, we were the number last there. When looking at all of the 3 cellular providers, looking at customer satisfaction, we were by far way behind everybody else. 18 months in, we were already number 2, a few points behind Vodacom. We had said, we want to be at the same and better than Vodacom. Vodacom used to come out in their advertising saying they're the best network. I remember telling my team that we are going to take that position. That is going to be our position. Let us attack them on the thing that they value the most. They are using their network. We want to have that. There was no belief within the team that we could do that. So that's again another thing. You have to create the belief in the team, because the team was so much, they were customers of MTN themselves. So they were experiencing the poor customer service. They just could not understand how we could get there. So the job of a leader is to help people to move into areas where they never thought that they could be themselves. Fast forward to today, they are saying they're the best network. It started then, it started with a belief. but coupled that the belief with a system and execution, the ability to say, let's break down this problem into chunks. Let's break down South Africa into 10 different cities. Let's take city by city. We'll be number one in Cape Town. We'll be number one in eThekwini. We'll be number one in, do that. And that's how we do it. On a culture perspective, the key focus that we have is really the focus on values. Values is that thing that I use to change the culture. So coming into our environment here in Altron, when I looked and interviewed a number of people sitting in meetings and asking them about the values that I saw on the wall, nobody seemed to even remember what those values are. Already to me, that was a sign that those values did not connect to the people. So the first thing was to come up with a new set of values, values that could connect, people could connect with. So we looked at what is it that we are good at as a company? What is it that we need to improve on? And now if you look at our values, it's a reflection of those two things. We combine the things. Said these are the things that we aspire to be as a company. Like you were asking about the candor. They said to me that we read about Altron in the newspapers that we're in trouble. The leaders of the business did not come to tell us that the company was in trouble. We read about it in the newspapers. That's not being open. You guys are not transparent. You need to be open and honest with us. Trust us that we can come up also with solutions to save this company. Engage us. That's what they said. So when you see one of our values, the top value is openness, honesty, and integrity. That openness is not that we already have it. We aspire to have it. We aspire to have candid and open and honest conversations with our staff. When there's something that is coming up, as difficult as it is, like now, right now, COVID-19, we had to reverse the salaries increases of our staff. Right across the board, we had increased our salaries of our staff on March the 1st, but 2 months in, we felt that we need to reverse that in order to save jobs for the company, to make sure that we do not retrench or we minimize retrenchments in the company. So we had to have those open and honest conversations with staff. Did they like it? Of course, they did not like it, but we're honest, showed everything. That's what people want. Then they support it. They understand the rationale. That's living the values. That's practical now. When it comes to us as executives, cutting our bonuses by half. These are the bonuses that we have already earned last year. But because of the current environment, felt it would be wrong to pay ourselves the bonuses and then retrench people. So we cut the bonuses by half, but we paid the rest of the staff their own bonuses. That's fairness. Fairness does not mean same thing to everybody. Because for us, we can take that 50% cut. But for someone way further down the organization, they may not be able to do that. So that is how we are living these values. They are practical. They are not things that is just on the wall. These are the things that we are using on a daily basis to make decisions that govern us as an entity.
So
that's
to
how
add to that,
capture is.
To add to that, I mean, I was, absolutely shocked to see what had happened with Naspers this week. Last week, this guy pays him, these executives pay themselves out hundreds of millions of rands. And the news this week is that they're now retrenching a couple of thousand people. It seems completely disconnected. It just really, in terms of fairness, that is just not fair, right?
Yeah.
And it's something, obviously as part of our culture that I hope to drive through is the transparency and the fairness of things. But leading on to this whole COVID thing that's obviously decimated the world and is in the process of, whether our government has done a good job of it or a bad job of it in terms of being reactive or proactive. We're seeing massive closures of SMEs throughout our country, which is leading to massive scale unemployment. I would like to ask you, if there are things in your view that need to change, and what can we do to make things different in terms of addressing both the business environments that we're faced with, but also this tectonic shift now in terms of new ways of having to do business?
Yeah. So the good thing is that you and I, Chris, we are in our businesses, Wyzetalk and our business in Altron. We are in a business space where I think we can benefit out of what is happening today, because what is happening today is accelerating digital transformation. Many of us have been talking about digital transformation for a long time. But now, because people have to work from home, and you have executives that in the past would never go to Teams and have sessions like this on Teams, they could never embrace Zoom. Now they are forced to use those tools. And they have suddenly realized that, man, this is actually a very effective tool. You think about it, why are we struggling to go to work, having to battle traffic every day? Really, when people can decide when to come to work and can come to work at the right time, make sure that they are not part of the traffic, heavy traffic, they miss that, So we need to ask that to allow people, this COVID-19 has changed things. If you look at yourself as a manager now, and your job, you thought of your job as that one of being a controller of people. I control the people that are under me. I give them direction. How much can you control them when they're at home, really? Very little. You don't know what you have to just trust that
Yes.
They are doing what they say that they are doing. So it's changing completely the dynamics of the manager and employee. We need to now start thinking more about the outcomes, measuring and looking at those outcomes versus, is the guy in at 8, that's an input, You can be in at 8 and do nothing for the whole day, or you can be at home and work for 2 hours and deliver. You look at the outputs, so it changes the way we do things. Think of the University of Cape Town, where it's saying there are, 30,000 students that want to get into Cape Town. They're only able to accept, let's say, 5,000 of those. What happens to the other 25,000 who wanted that education? We don't know what happens to them, but they still have the need. But now, if we move online, it changes everything. We now no longer have the issue of there's no accommodation. We no longer have the issue of the number of classes. We need to only have a few people that we can accept. No, we can now give education to as many people as possible. So it changes everything. What is happening now? It gives us an opportunity as a nation to address things differently. Think about it, we've got a shortage of doctors in this country. And now, because there is going to be an increasing use of telemedicine, because of COVID-19, people can be able to be examined, remotely, if you're a patient. And what does that thing do to society? It makes the limited resources that we have available to as many of our people in society as possible. So these are the opportunities that I see being driven by this new way, and this is where the government needs to really be clear and see the opportunity and start investing, not in brick and mortar, but investing in digital infrastructure that will help people to be able to get these services that they're looking for. So there is a huge opportunity that I see here, an opportunity for people to come up with innovative ways of serving communities, of serving customers, and also taking the costs of services down, because now you are using digital technology. So you're making the services affordable to as many people as possible. So we are entering a great new world. We need to look at it like that and take the opportunity that is in front of us.
So we're currently, I think, as South Africa, we come from an incredibly checkered past. There have been some strides, but everybody would admit that nothing, it hasn't worked as well as it should have worked. We've had a government, specifically over the last 8 years, that absolutely failed its people. And while they are, there seem to be some action in terms of trying to improve it, I sort of feel that we've hit an absolute tsunami as a nation. I mean, not only are the unemployment numbers increasing exponentially, we've been hit by COVID, we've got rampant corruption throughout government. In your opinion, and this is a question from our chairman, Oliver Drews, is if you were in charge of things, what would be the 3 policies that you'd like to change if you were in government? What are the significant policies you would drive to change as a leader?
And so I think we need to understand, in order for us to address this problem, we need to understand what is the root of the problem, in order to come up with solutions. In my mind, I may be wrong, but this is my analysis. You have a group of people that have been schooled in a different ideology. They've been schooled largely in the socialist and communist ideology, and that's how they grew up. The whole organization, I'm now talking the ANC, has come from that environment. And now they are managing a highly sophisticated and a complex capitalist system. So all the time there's this tension, the tension of an ideology, in this other world, business is actually an enemy. But now you're managing an economy which is largely driven by business. What is your relationship with business? So you have people that fundamentally think that business is bad. It is inherently bad, can never deliver good things. But they are managing that environment. So you've got this tension forever, having this tension. That unfortunately, it requires time for those leaders to be out of the system, to have possibly the good things, people like Cyril, who have largely not gone anywhere, have been in the country, have had some interaction with business, can appreciate the value of business. But even the people below them, the younger ones that can understand that we truly do need business, is such a critical part of building a nation. It's such a critical part of delivering the services that we are looking for as a nation. So that requires time. But it's something that we need to be conscious of, that we have this tension. But people that fundamentally just do not believe business, they see business as an enemy. Let's break down big business. There's that thinking, break things down. That's what I talk about in the book, that, when you're looking at white monopoly capital, probably your company is called a white monopoly capital too, and our company probably is called the same thing as well. But if you then double click on our company, look at it, you'll find that 70% of the people that we've employed in this company is Black people. So now, if we go this route of let us kill this, break this, kill this white monopoly capital, but have you looked at who is in there? You know, have you really looked? Don't look at, maybe at some point even the leaders of the business were white, but now it's not. You know, everybody, there's a diverse group of people. If you break this thing and get rid of it, the impact that it will have on the people, you know, we've got 8,500 people that we employ here. We need all of them, you know. So that's the one thing. You then also look who is investing in this company. Who are the shareholders of this company? You then go look at this, the PIC, is this the Sanlams, is the Old Mutual. Then whose pensions are in those companies like Sanlam? And you'll find that it's actually a significant number of Black people's pensions in there. And now they're getting their returns through a company like ours. So if you go and kill this company, what are the consequences to the people that have pensions that are invested in this company? You know, so it's that connection that somehow people cannot make between things. You know, that all of these things are tightly connected. If you go and destroy a Capitec, an FNB, a Standard Bank, you are actually shooting yourself in the foot. You know, because first of all, that Standard Bank, a significant number of people employed in that Standard Bank happen to be Black. The pensions of many of the people's pensions that are the investors of Standard Bank, those pensions go back to the same people that are in government, the Black employees there. Okay. So that is that fundamental lack of understanding of interconnectedness of things and the importance of preserving the system that we have. So I would say, first, let's address the issue. It's a long-term thing. Let's address the issue of education. Our education is not giving us the outcomes that we want. We need to address that. And it's really painful to see, even you can see the disaster even now and how COVID-19's response around education is being managed, how poorly it is. We need to address that as a nation, education. And let's start from the bottom. I continue to talk about the values. We need to inculcate the values that can make this nation a winning nation. Some of us are too old now to change, but we need to start at the bottom there. It must be a 20-year thing, saying that, you know, as people go through the system, they come up with the thinking that they need to solve their own problems instead of waiting for things to be done for them. And that can only come out through that being taught at school, you know, from a very young age. The other piece that is so important is about the rule of law. You know, many nations, all nations that are progressive, nations that are developing, that are doing well, there is a direct correlation between that and the rule of law and discipline, the ability. This lawlessness that we find in our country, it is something that has to stop, you know. And if we want to be a world-class country, and I don't think in this generation of ours we can change it. It also needs to start from the you know, beginning, of the early childhood development, and that piece, you know. So education, creating a safe working environment, you know, safety and security, that is critical, because that is so key to bringing people into our country. And being very clear, don't be ambiguous about what you stand for. You know, somehow there's this thought that capitalism is evil. So there is this confusion. You can never know where we are going because people do not want to be seen to be. We need to take a stand. We are this, but let us make capitalism also work for everybody, not work for a few people. But the capital system is the only system right now in the world that is able to deliver the kind of results. You know, until such time that there's something better, let us use the thing that is working elsewhere. And that is the capital system. Tweak it, you know. So it's the clarity around policy. You know, we have got policies that are confused now. You can never know because we're trying to be seen to be everywhere. Very clear policies, economic policies. Take decisions, you know, when it comes to keeping all of these state-owned enterprises that are making losses, you know, you need to cut your losses, shift those resources into high growth areas, you know, and that those decisions are not being made, and it's largely because of the ideology, you know? And that's what I mean by being very clear about where we want to go about the economic policies. What do we stand for as a country? So the economic policies, being clear about who we are, the health, the security, and education. Those are the four levers that I would pull. Some of those, unfortunately, it has to take a long time, but it's something that needs to be done. It needs to start somewhere. It needs to start somewhere.
So, I mean, that's exactly what you've done with Altron, right? You saw assets that were no longer part of where you saw the business going, and you managed to carve those off, and you're focusing on the product that you do.
In the areas of growth. That is what exactly the same thing that we need to be doing. You know, it may have worked in the past, in the apartheid past, to be focusing on coal, on this, all of those industries, but it may not be the right thing to do right now. Let's shift, you know. Yes. Let's not be married to the old. Let's look at what's new now. Invest in those new.
So there are two things that we've spoken about. One is around, digital transformation, and the other one then is about where we are with education. Now, the problem that we often see, and certainly with our clients, is we've now capacitated to reverse build the data that the employees use on our solution. But if we are to change things and to make education the forefront of things that we need to change, how do we deal with this data cost situation? Because, you know, one thing you've said now, which is something I didn't even really think about, we've got 50,000 applicants going to UCT that may, or to Stellenbosch that may all qualify, but there's a finite amount of space that's available. But if we were to digitize that, then you can have, then that can exponentially increase in terms of qualifications and more, you know, graduate professionals going into the open market space. But the big barrier for a lot of people is around hardware, and then it's around data. So, you know, what is government going to do, or what should it do in order to make data the least expensive globally, whereas we are now the most expensive globally?
Yeah. So what we can do is, again, you need to know the levers that you can pull as a government. And as a government, the levers that you can pull is around regulation, around licensing. You know, when you give out a license to an MTN, to a Vodacom, like now we're going to 5G, right? And they are looking for spectrum for 5G. Yeah, let's give you the spectrum. Instead of sitting on the spectrum that we all need, give these guys the spectrum that they need, but it must come with clear conditions. I'm giving you this, but you need to make sure that for students, it's going to be 0 rated, you know. That's the condition. It's either you want that or not, but that's the condition, you know. And the good thing is that Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, Telkom, they are actually investing in their own future by allowing and having more and more people being educated and qualifying. They will end up having customers that are high net worth kind of customers. So having a long-term view of the world, you know, so it's not like, oh, why are we being given all of these tough conditions. No, you are actually investing. You are
The future.
investing for the future. And they will be happy. Like what we did in the past, Telkom was asked to do the connection of the rural areas and this and that. That was good for them, but that was wireline. We did it on the wrong space. We should have looked at the mobile space, and which means it can be done. Let us just go do that. Then you make like what they're doing now. If you are a student at VETS, you are trying to connect education content there, it's zero rated. So we are not being charged for that connection. That's what it needs to. Then government, on their part, then to start to give people the infrastructure some of the people cannot afford, give them a laptop a child, Hey.
I've seen just in terms of your transition over the last 18 months, 2 years, that you have made acquisitions of businesses overseas. And in your book, you talk about de-risking in some way and form. And coupled to that is, of course, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we are now headquartered in the Netherlands. And the reason for that is, that the Dutch, in terms of, they've got a program called Invest Holland. So you have major tax incentives. They make it really attractive for businesses like ours, particularly to do what we've done. And oftentimes, certainly as the CEO of Wyzetalk, I've found that there are a lot of impediments to small businesses in South Africa. And what I mean by that is that the moment you reach a certain kind of level, you're then forced to adopt all sorts of policies which can become laborious and expensive for a business. There needs to be also decoupling with identifying that entrepreneurship is so absolutely vital to a nation like ours. And sometimes I personally have felt that it's been that they almost start throwing roadblocks into your way as you're growing to start conforming to what would normally be confined to large corporate businesses. And, I look at how easy it's been for us to go to Holland and, literally within the space of 60 to 90 days, everything's done. But you look in South Africa and it's really not that way. It's much more complex. It's much more, as I've said, it's almost like they're putting roadblocks in your way rather than saying, here's an open freeway and we're going to let you run with it.
To me, the answer goes back to the ideology thing.
Yeah.
Because you may think, okay, that ideology, that is, there's a need for control. You're coming from an ideology that wants to control, right? Versus an ideology which says, create the space, be an enabler. That orientation, and there's an orientation which says, my job as a government is to enable. That is one orientation. That's a worldview. The other worldview is, I want to control. Ours, because of the ideology where many of our leaders come from, they want to control. If you look at how complex some of the regulations have been and how meaningless regulations around COVID-19, it's all again is driven by that lack of trust. I do not trust business that they will ever do what they should be doing. So I need to lay out specific rules for each and everything for them, instead of trusting that, by the way, it is in the business's interest to have their employees safe. If our employees, I no longer have employees because of COVID-19, I don't have a business. So it is in my interest to protect those employees. It's not the monopoly of government to be looking after my employees. We care for the lives of your employees. We care the same, even probably more, for those employees, because right. Without them there is no. But the issue is around this control, and the problem with this thing, you create complexity. BEE is, the more things are going, the more they become even more complex. A it becomes so difficult to comply with some of the things. This particular person, because of this, and is excluded in this calculation. It used to be very clear, if you are investing in a black segment of your employees, that contributes towards skills development, for example. But now it should be, no, you need to be training people that are outside of your organization for that to contribute to skills development. So you're actually being encouraged to train not your staff, not your employees, but people that are out there. So it's so confusing. We're trying to solve so many problems using one tool, which creates complexity. So I think that's the issue. We need to simplify things, and what's required is people that can understand, being very clear about things. People understand business. Let me just be blunt. We need more of those kind of people being in government and helping to simplify things and make the environment that much more easy. At an intellectual level, people understand that they need to attract investors, but they also think that the investors, they don't understand that we're competing with other countries for that investment. If our country is not conducive, people have got an option to go to Netherlands, for example.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's that thing, but unfortunately, it's an ideological thing.
Mteto, I'm aware that we're 3 minutes from 10 o'clock. One final question. What do you think the secret is to being a great leader?
Wow. That's assuming that I know. So I would say that the key, maybe let me just move it to myself. What I choose to do, Reis, is first, I try to be myself. I try to be authentic. I try not to be, a fake. So when people connect with me today, or then they connect with me over the weekend, we meet over the weekend, they're seeing the same Mteto. It's not like there's a Mteto at home, there's a Mteto at work, there's a Mteto, in the golf course. No, it's just one person, underpinned by one set of values, and there's consistency, So, and that's very important to people. People need to, they need to, because they're always trying to figure out their leader, right? If they can never really figure them out, then there's this confusion, they never know, But when there's consistency, they can see how decisions are being made, the rationale behind those decisions, and the fairness behind those decisions. They are becoming much more comfortable, I may not be there now, but I know that the process to get me there is a fair process, because this leader has created structures that are fair, that are inclusive, and that is very important. So that's the first thing, being yourself. I think the secondly is being a leader that is, I think my job is to help the people that are working for me and make things easy for them. Each one of them have got problems. I report to the board, and my job is to try and unlock these things, to make their lives easier. If they have to be represented elsewhere, I need to go and do that. If I can see that the government may be bringing some policies that will have a negative impact on our business, it is my responsibility to go and engage government to create the right environment for my business. So it's that I'm actually, yes, they're working for me, but I'm actually serving them. That's very, very important. And they must feel it. It must not be like it's just an academic thing. You literally are doing that thing, serving them. And I think the last point that I would like to make here is that you need to this thing of having an inner circle, you know, I've been part of an inner circle. You know, we've got a leadership team, and then maybe 4 or 5 people are part of the inner circle. And I've seen how negative that thing can be to the people that are not part of that inner circle. One needs to be able to support equally the people that are reporting to him or her, you know. Try and make, I know naturally there's always may have a preference of that individual over the other. You know, we need to have the discipline to make sure that we create the space for all of the people reporting to us, support them, because our success depends on all of them being successful, not just the inner circle. You know.
Mteto, I would like to thank you very, very much for your time today. We've run a little bit over, but thank you so, so much. We really appreciate it, and really you're a phenomenal business leader. I follow you every day, and it's really a privilege to know you, and I'm very grateful that you've given the last hour of your time for my team and I. I wish you a great weekend. Enjoy the cold, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris. I wish you and your team all the best. We are watching, we are your fans. We continue to be proud of the work that you guys are doing. Continue to do that great work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.